Hey guys, welcome to Jake Caleb Design, and I am your host Jake. And today we are going to set this house on fire. In one of my latest covers that I posted, a friend of mine, or an author friend of mine, asked me how I used fire, how I integrated it into my piece that looked so good. And so my fire process is like my magic process. If you saw that video of how I make my magic, it's a pretty simple process. And because my aim for all my work mainly is usually to get in and get out, so I can get the proof done, get to the client, and then we can kind of work it from there. But I'm going to show you very quickly how I would go about setting this house on fire, integrating fire, and just how the process works for me. When I use my fire, I mainly use stock photo fire. One of my favorite ones I use is this one right here. And so I'd pull it up. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to select all. I'm going to copy this layer. Then I'm going to paste it right into Photoshop, right over my piece. Next thing I do is turn on the screen layer. And automatically you kind of see the fire already starts to get integrated. When you turn on the screen hides all your black and it leaves any color that's left. One of the things I have to watch out for when using fire is once you hit the screen button, you need to make sure that you go in and check the levels, make sure the levels are on the black is down enough, because if you don't, you'll end up with these little edges up here. You see up here how it's got this hard edge, and if you're putting a lot of fire into your piece, you'll end up with a lot of those little edges. So you got to watch out for those little trimming edges. And usually if you go in and just adjust the levels or exposure or curves, whichever layer you feel comfortable with. I adjust the mid curves. I meant to adjust the midpoint here on my levels, which automatically hides my midtones and pushes them down, and so it hides those sharp edges. You need to watch out for that. So if I take my fire and then I just integrate it into my piece, I try to follow shapes and edges, and so you can see this fire stock that I have here has a nice edge right here, and so I might set it on top of the roof right there. And then I'm going to use the same fire element mainly through the whole entire piece. We'll put it maybe down here. Typically, if I was doing a piece where I had a bunch of fire on the cover, I'm going to have smoke. I'm going to have a little bit of debris in the air and that kind of stuff, and so I will kind of push my fire into the bottom black so it kind of fades, and you kind of get this. You just kind of see a hint of the fire at the bottom. I'm going to take and we'll flip this. And that's one of the things you should be doing with your stock photos. You should be able to get your mileage out of them. I'm going to put this here, and let's see, one more. Let's hide it. Yeah, we'll hide it. There you go. Pushing it behind the piece, and all I've done so far is just integrate fire in front of and behind. I followed my shape with this piece over here. I followed the edge of this house with the edge of the fire here in the photo. Put some behind here, which creates the edge of the house again is used to show that it's in front of the fire. And what you're doing is you're very, very quickly creating depth. You're really putting the fire in front of and behind, and it makes it look like it's really into the piece. Now what I would do is I would go in and I would put mask layers on all this. Clipping mask. Not clipping mask. Layer mask, excuse me. I'd put in layer mask here on all three of these, and then I'm going to go in and just edit out some of my fire that I have on my piece. So I would take an organic brush, doesn't matter what one, any brush that has a rough edge, So like this right here is fine. It's just a black brush. I mean, it's just an ink swash type brush. And I'm going to get on my layer mask, and I'm going to have black selected. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start knocking out some of the fire that I don't need in this piece. And I'm going to kind of follow the shape of this chimney here to show that it's just button up against the chimney. You can change, my opacity here is at 100 with black. Change it to like a mid-gray, say 45, and you're going to start getting some gradients with your fire. And then let's pick on another one here. The first one I used, we got that hard edge. Need to make sure that we get rid of that. So I'm going to move back to 100% opacity, and I'm going to knock it out. going back to 40% opacity, just so that I get some good, some good fades in there. Back to 100 here to get rid of all this excess fire that's floating in the air that we don't need. And I can see now the one that's behind the house has a hard edge, so I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna leave it at like just 50%, and I'm gonna knock that hard edge off. Back to 100 to move through this excess that we don't need. Put on like 20% so that I can get rid of, so I can again knock out my hard edges. And this is not exact science. I mean, you take a soft brush and you just kind of do this till you think it looks good. There's no exact way you need to hide your fire. One of the big things is making sure your fire follows a shape so that it does kind of add that depth. Outside of that, that's a little trick you can do. But outside of that, you're placing fire and you're integrating it. Here on this piece of fire, it doesn't follow a shape. There is no shape of the house that it follows, and that's fine. It's not a big deal. We are going to play with that here in just a moment, but this is kind of starts to put it together. One of the things I'd also recommend is you make sure you watch how your fire is leaning. So I don't want to have a piece of fire going this way and then have a piece of fire going that way. You don't want contrasting directions with your fire. You want it all to be going in the same direction. And you can set this up before you do any of your cuts or any of your layer masks to integrate your pieces. But you want to make sure your fire is always following the same direction, because you're thinking it's windy, or there may be wind or a breeze or anything like that, and fire will not go against this stuff. It'll always follow in the same way. So, all right, and this right here from the jump, I mean, for this to be a background image in a book cover for me, there would usually be a character in front of this or something like that. This is okay. This is moving right along. Now the extra elements I want to add are smoke. I want to add smoke. I want to add some embers, and I also want to piddle with the shape of the house. So let's go through there. Smoke. Again, you can use any brush that has a rough edge. For me, I use Ron's smoke and cloud brushes. You can pick them up off of Daz.com, Daz3D.com. He's got a great set that just do a chunk of the work for you. You could go in with a cloudy brush. So like here's one of Greg's brushes, and you could go in and you can make it yourself. Pick a cloud brush one that's got a rough edge, rough pattern, and there you go. Just with some black, you're automatically putting in the brush itself. Because of the fact that the brush is organic, it itself will make that smoke for you. You also want to make sure that your smoke follows the direction of your flames. I'm going to put a layer mask on my smoke, 20%, so that I can kind of pop some of these edges away so it's not such a solid black. You can also take an orange, pull an orange from your fire and go up the smoke, and then clip mask. So I've made two layers here. I've got my smoke layer, which is black, and I made another layer that it has just some orange on it. Using that same cloud brush, I'm going to clip mask it to it, and now you're getting some of the light reflection in the smoke, which is pretty neat. Like I said, you can make your own smoke. You can also pick the brush. Let me find it. I've got a whole bunch of brushes. Let me find Ron's. Ron's right here. Ron's Steam and Smoke. You can find it on Daz3D.com. He's got some great smoke you can work with. Make sure I got black selected. And one brush, and the one brush does everything you need it to do. It's got the organic nature of smoke. It's got lights and darks. It works really well. I'm going to go ahead. It's got a hard edge up there. I'm going to knock that out real quick. Oops. And again, making sure your smoke follows the smoke that already exists. The last thing you can do, you can use this smoke photo. I'm pretty sure I've got some in here. Let's find one right here. Here we go. I picked this one up from a long time ago. But its tire is on fire. Placing it behind the house. And I'm going to use it for this upper left fire area. And again, I've rotated it so that again this smoke is following the other smoke. And now I'm going to put a clip mask, a layer mask on it. Excuse me, a layer mask. I'm going to select a rough edged brush. You need one that's got rough edges and kind of gives you a smoky, cloudy feel when you do it. And those things can be found everywhere on product sites for brushes. I got this set on 40%. I'm gonna move it to 70. You might not see me. Actually going up here and highlighting this and changing it to 80. When you have your brush selected, if you just punch a number on your, if you just punch a number, I'm sorry. If you just punch a number on your number pad or on your keyboard, it changes it up there. If you'll see, it's moving from, I'm going to go 10%, 20%, oh, too fast. If you go too fast, it'll let you get real specific. But 30%, wait a second, 60%. You can change it just on the fly by punching a piece on your keyboard. And so this smoke doesn't look quite as good because it's got some bright grays in it. And that's just because this photo has a different contrast and a different color layout than the image I'm working with now. And so I can go into, select the photo of my smoke, go into layers or image, sorry. Go into image adjustment levels, and you can, oh, I have my layer mask selected, not my photo. There we go. Image levels, and that automatically starts pulling it into there. Most of these little nodes, it starts pulling it into something that matches the solid black smoke that I have. And that would be up to you if you wanted to use this kind. If you wanted to use smoke for your smoke stock for your smoky areas, the thing to do there again would be to use the same smoke in a couple different areas so that you get this nice repeating pattern, so that you start integrating the same imagery, the same kind of contrast in the piece so that it starts to look more cohesive, and you don't have, you know, two solid black smoke areas in one real detailed area. So you just need to pick how you wanted to use it. I'm going to go with just the smoke that I already have. What I'm going to do right now is grab my original smoke layer right here with my orange fill. I'm going to duplicate that, pull it over here, change it up a little bit, stretch it and adjust it so that it does look a little bit different. It doesn't quite look like I just copied and pasted my smoke. Going to pull my organic smoke brush back up, and then I'm going to knock a couple of these edges, knock the shape of this smoke back a little bit, so again it doesn't mimic quite like doesn't mimic the smoke stacked beside it. So, all right, so I've got my smoke integrated, and I've got some orange overlaid into it so that it kind of creates a depth and a reflection with the smoke and the smoke and the fire, and it kind of meshes well with the black. Next thing to do would be to add some debris and some ash and some embers. It's a speckled type brush, nothing major, and you want to brush or place these in the same direction as your smoke and your fire, and you can determine how much you want or how little you need, and just place them on the page, on your piece, so that it begins to kind of look like there's ash and there's debris, smoke falling in the air. You can play with different depths of this. You can say make a layer where it's set to like 50% opacity, and then make a layer set to like 100% opacity, and it kind of starts to give you some different colors, some different levels to look at in terms of bigger, darker pieces of ash, and then lighter colored pieces of ash. Ember, same way. You can take that same speckle brush, change it to an orange or a yellow, just any kind of bright ember type color, and get over your fire and follow the length of your fire again, keeping it all in the same direction, and it begins to integrate your embers. You can also use Ember Stock. I use Ember Stocks all the time. I love Ember Stocks. I picked up this set of Ember Stocks from photobash.co. I think it's their website now. It used to be photobash.org, but they changed it to photodash.co here recently. And you can buy an Ember pack, and it's just got a whole bunch of photos of embers. You know, nothing major, nothing great, but I mean they have a variety of embers. I can drag one into Photoshop, and it's the same setting with your with the fire. You set it to screen. You want to make sure that the levels are adjusted down, so I grab my levels and just knock it down just a little bit, and just place it in your piece. And you want to place it in areas where it looks like it belongs. I wouldn't put embers up here in the left side if nothing's going on. You want to make sure you place them where they have some semblance of purpose. So down here with my little layer that I made earlier from my foreground, I'm going to put a layer mask on it. Take that same cloud brush that I've been using for everything, and I'm going to set it to maybe 30% opacity, and I'm going to knock off just the top of my gradient so that it doesn't look so static and so uniform. But alright, next piece of this puzzle, and again, you know, you can push this as far as you want to. Next piece of this puzzle would be to start knocking out pieces of the house. And so my house is right here. Take a brush that, again, doesn't have a hard shape, it's more organic, more rough, and just remove pieces of the house. And you can see how when I started doing that, like this fire that I have behind it, this fire just lines right up with that removal. This fire right here, it fits perfectly with where I'm starting to remove pieces of the house that have potentially burned away. You do the same thing on this portion of the house. We'll take it out. And I'm going to remove part of the house here where there's no real fire. And remove it, and then I'm going to go back in and do a little bit of paint. So I'm going to take and maybe make a rafter that's still standing. Just some areas that look like they burn away, but there's some sort of detail there. Not big, doesn't have to be great, but this kind of adds a little bit of detail without really having to add any detail. I'm going to make a new layer above my house. I'm going to clip mask it to my house, and take any kind of organic brush again. I'm going to use the cloud brush that we've been using. I'm going to set it to black, and where the house is burning at, I'm going to just go in and pop in some black, and you'll see the little areas that are starting to just darken on the house. Last but not least, again, going back to messing with shapes of the house, right? So I've deleted this. I'm hiding my layer mask here so you can see what we had originally, and now I've got it back on. I've got some structure brushes, some crumbling structure brushes that work really well to add detail, again, with not having to put a lot of detail in. So Ron's Apocalypse is the brush pack I've used. If you watch any of my videos, Ron's brushes are used like all the time. He does great brushes that cut my workflow down. I use them all the time. And so he's got an Apocalypse brush here that has a bunch of buildings and busted stuff, random things where you can pop in quick backgrounds, quick debris, quick destruction. And so I'm going to pick one of his brushes here. Let's see. This one might be good. I'll take a look at this brush real fast. Okay, this is what we're looking at. This is what it looks like. And what I would do now is I would go in behind the house and get near where I want to follow the shape of the house and pop in a couple details. You see right there how I got black selected, nothing major, and I am just adding some pieces to put just a little bit more detail in. This is not necessarily a step you have to do, but it's one that you can do. Like right there, see how that kind of goes back and mimics the corner of the house that I had? I might go in and take out some of that brush. So I'm going to put a layer mask on. I always work with layer masks because I always like to work non-destructively, so I can come back in and add it back if I need to. But all I've done here is I got a brush on it. I got the brush on its own layer. I put a layer mask on it, and I'm going to knock off just the top piece of this, so that it kind of does look like the edge of that house. You can also do that same thing here where I was painting away parts of the house. You could take a brush like Ron's, one of these non-destructive, one of these brushes here, and do that same exact thing and knock out a chunk of the house with your brush. And I always like to go back in and paint a little bit back. But you take that brush and it automatically gives you these random rough edges where it looks like the house is decaying or falling apart or on fire. So you don't have to paint them in with the brush if you don't want to. You can find a brush that would do the work for you. I kind of like what we got here. Like right there, I'm painting it back in, and I'm getting this nice, rough, burnt, sharp edge that looks like it's, this house is on fire, man. Now we have set a house on fire. I appreciate you watching the video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask them. I hope that I was clear, concise, and I hope you learned something. Until next time, guys.